Now, Benson is from the genus of all the human beings and everything else. It's from all the human beings. That's the istithna of the genus. But the istithna of other than the genus is where you say, I told the girls to sit down, and everyone sat down but the dog. That is the istithna of the non-genus, in which you are referring to a whole bunch of things within the scope of one subject, and something outside of that genus is referred to in the exception of the rule. That happens a lot in Arabic. Everyone stood up but the camel. All the men were told to drink, and they all drank except for the woman. Right? Those are exceptions to the rule that are used to emphasize that the thing that is being accepted from that statement is about to enter into the main foreground of the subject. So the fact that it was left out of the rest of the conversation means this thing here is about to be entered into the main body of the discussion. What you're getting here is a full understanding of the fact that when Allah revealed the Qur'an, He knew very well why He was revealing it, how He was revealing it, the sense He was revealing it. Every word has been put in its proper place. Because it's easy, us coming from the outside, to think, subhanAllah, that seems kind of haphazard. Why was it stated just like that? But there's a difference between literature and revelation. Shakespeare's literature. You can look at Shakespeare and say, I wonder what he meant by this. Maybe it was a flourish of the pen. Maybe he forgot. Or maybe he meant that and that word's not used anymore. Or when you look in English common law, you say, I wonder what that's doing in there. You see some facets of English common law in the U.S. Anyone carrying pliers across the Missouri state line shall therefore be arrested and fined and remain in jail and they will give a time until he can manumit himself. Whoever should carry one sheep through a fence measuring 4 feet by 6 feet shall be arrested, thereupon summarily flogged thrice, and then put in jail. You're thinking, what is all of this about? Because sometimes it was just put there to stop other things, or barons or other people put these common law practices in place to try to stop other things. But in the speech of Allah, you see everything falls, every word in its place, because there's a specific purpose behind it. And that's the wisdom when you see in the revelation of Allah. As for the discussion regarding Iblis, that he was among the angels and then they all prostrated except Iblis. This is an example of the exceptional rule other than the thing that belongs to the category, right? Other than the genus, right? Because Iblis was exempt from that genus. He was one of the jinn. He was one of the jinn. Imam Ibn Al-Jawzi rahimahullah, he then says, quote, regarding the origin of the name Iblis, there are two positions. One is that this is a non-Arabic word without any derivation. And because of this, we can find no way to derive the word. This is the understanding of Abu Ubaidah, Az-Zujaj, and Ibn Al-Ambari. Secondly, is the position that it's derived from Al-Iblas. And this is from the root Al-Ya'as, which means to lose all hope. This is narrated from Abu Salih, and it was also mentioned by Ibn Qutaybah, who mentioned the same statement and said, no, actually it can't be derived because there is no name for him. This is showing the severity of the affair. Our Sheikh Abu Mansur Al-Lughawi has said, the first position is more correct, in which if the narration was coming from Al-Iblas or Al-Ya'as, to lose hope, it would have been a derivable root. Don't you see looking at it, that if a man was named with a title, it would have been known among all the other people the meaning of that title. But this title is not known. Close quote. What the Imam is referring to is the fact that most of the scholars have settled upon the fact that Iblis is just the name that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given him. We don't know what the meaning is. We have no way to derive it. It's just the name that's been given to him. And as a punishment, because obviously you can see that the name that he had before, Azazil, the mighty slave of Allah, and then being given as a proper name, a name that none of the rest of the creation knows what it means. So he's lost a noble and lofty name and been given a name that has no meaning. He's lost that. Imam Ibn Al-Jawzi rahimahullah then says, quote, when Allah says, so he abstained, refused, and was arrogant. Abstained means he prevented himself. And he was arrogant, meaning that he showed arrogance and pride. Now let us look at the expression. Because it is read, and he became one of the unbelievers. But the wording used is وَكَانَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ, which is, and he was one of the unbelievers. There are two statements regarding this. One is it means that he became at that point, and this is stated by Qatada. But the second, it means that in the past, he was already known to have been an unbeliever. This means that in the knowledge of Allah, he was already a kafir, but had not yet manifested his kufr. And this was said by Muqatil and Ibn Al-Ambari. Allah the Exalted has said, and we said, O Adam, you and your wife are to live in the paradise. The wife of Adam is Hawa. And the scholars of the Hijaz say, to the wife of a man, Zawj. Although in most cases it would be Zawjah in the feminine tense, but at times in Arabic the expression Zawj without ta marbuta can be used. And the plural of Zawj in this instance is Azwaj. Tamim and many of the others and the people of Najd, they say Zawjah, and the plural is Zawjat. And so the poet, one of the poets said, indeed that which has gone about and has come to my wife, just as the one has gone to the lion that is wicked, that has tested us with his evil. In the paradise which Adam lived in, there are two statements. One is, it was the paradise of Aden, which was the paradise for that time. Secondly, it was the eternal paradise to come that he left from. The raghad, or the provision in this ayah, is referring to the provision that's been spread out greatly. So when you say that you've given someone raghad, it means that they received great and plentiful provision. Close quote. What Imam Ibn Al-Jawzi rahimahullah is referring to is the paradise referred to here, the Jannah. Well, Adam, you shall stay in the Jannah with your wife. Some scholars, because there was a difference of opinion among some scholars, some say that it wasn't the Jannah that's to come. It's not the Jannah that's to come for all eternity. It was a Jannah, but it's not the one to come. It was a generic Jannah to come. But the second group of scholars say, no, he left from the Jannah of all eternity. That is to come. Then and now that is to come. Now the dispute centers around the fact of this position. Most of the scholars answer the first argument by saying, you are assuming that Iblis entered into the paradise and they were subsequently expelled from it. But all of the verses in the Qur'an, وَنَادَهُمَا, and he called them, he said to them, indicate a conversation that is taking place at a veritable distance. Either with Iblis outside of the paradise, speaking to them while being therein, or them coming to the door or somewhere near there and being addressed. The other side disagrees. The other side disagrees. Secondly, the preponderant view says, this is the paradise of all eternity, and it has no contradiction, because someone may say, wait a minute, look at what Allah has mentioned in the Qur'an. Once someone goes into the paradise, they don't come out of there. What are they doing coming out of the paradise? They can't, because it's the eternal paradise. What are they doing coming out of the eternal paradise? The scholars answer this question very simply. They say, if you read the ayat mention that those who enter into the paradise, all the different ayat in the Qur'an, those who enter the paradise shall never exit. Adam and Hawa alayhim salam never entered the paradise, they were created therein. That's ilm. See, that's ilm. You see, us, we would be thinking for hours and hours and hours and trying to get down to the bottom and fighting and stabbing one another with implements that we've made or other things like this. We'd be trying to figure out the answer to the question. But look at this. This shows knowledge of the Qur'an. That's knowledge of the Qur'an. So Adam and Hawa alayhim salam could not be referenced in this passage, and it's not a contradiction in this passage because they didn't enter in. They were created therein. So their exit therefrom isn't going to cause us any contradiction. Now, if you say on the day of resurrection, there's some people that are going to go in and go out like an escalator inside of a department store, yeah, that's a major issue. Because that's the Jahmiyyah, and they're not considered from Ahlul Sunnah wal-Jama'ah. That's true. But this is not referring to that position. Right? Imam Ibn Al-Jawzi, rahimahullah, he then says, quote, then Allah the Exalted has said, the two of you are not to draw near to this tree, meaning to eat from it, not necessarily drawing near to it. Regarding the tree in question, there are 6 positions. One is that it is the tree that is a quince. A quince. This is the statement of Ibn Abbas, Abdullah ibn Salam, Ka'b ibn al-Ahbar, Wahab ibn Munabbih, Qatada, Atiyya al-Awfi, Muharib ibn Dithar, and Muqatil. Second, it is the grapevine, as narrated from Ibn Mas'ud, Ibn Abbas, Sa'id ibn Jubair, Ja'da ibn Hubayrah. Thirdly, is that some conclude that it was the fig tree. This is narrated from Al-Hasan, Ata ibn Abi Ribah, and Ibn Jurayj. Fourthly, is that someone called it the tree of knowledge, as is stated by Abu Salih from Ibn Abbas. Fifthly, it is called the tree of camphor, which is an ointment, as is narrated from Ali ibn Abi Talib. And sixthly, it is the date palm, and this is narrated from Abu Malik. There was a 7th position mentioned from Wahab ibn Munabbih, in which he said this is referring to the tree of eternity. But it should be understood that the speech being used here is only being used according to its type. Close quote. What the Imam is saying is, the name of the tree really is irrelevant. What's relevant was the command of it. That's why the ulama can differ in it. Because if the name of the tree was relevant to the discussion, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have said, don't touch the quince tree, or as the Christians and Jews will have to have the apple tree. So that's why sometimes they'll show you a picture of 2 apples with bites out of them. And this is where it all started and these type of things. But that's Judeo-Christian. The scholars that have differed on the 6 points have said either the quince or the fig or the date palm or the grapevine. So some of them said that it's the vine. It's not necessarily the fruit, it's the vine.